What's up, guys? In this video I'm going to show you basically just a headlight restoration 101, what's going on, how you can restore these headlights that might have scratches, oxidation, all that good stuff, all the common stuff. And it's easy to get some really nice high quality results, making your lights look brand new. So just stick with me. Do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll show you the method of getting great results the easy way every time. So here's a look back before, and we have scratches you can see here, as well as sun damage. You'll get scratches, very fine scratches, crisscross from all kinds of things, tree branches, whatever. But as you can see on this one, we have a lot of sun damage as well, because it's very important to put a protective coating on it after you polish it, and we'll get to that later on in the video. But as I zoom in here, you can see just really fine scratches. And so what I would recommend doing is pulling your vehicle in to where you're shaded, but also where you're going to be able to run a water hose. So the tools you're going to need is, number one, you're going to need a water hose with, I would recommend, a nozzle that'll allow you to mist water. And you're going to need that because we're going to be wet sanding this plastic. So you're going to need to pick up some sandpaper. The most aggressive grit I would use is 600, and then I would recommend getting like 800, 1000, 1500, and then 2000. Then also you're going to need a polishing pad to go with a drill. And then also your drill will need to have RPMs ranging from 1200 to 1800. And then you're also going to need some polishing compound. Now there's many kits you can buy that will give you some of this stuff, or you can just buy it all individually, and I'll get to that in just here in a moment. So basically, here's a kit that I've used several times to restore headlights, and it works pretty well. Comes with a couple of things, and you can substitute, so you don't have to get this, and this isn't a sponsored ad or anything. But this basically kind of will help explain the general idea. So basically we're going to wet sand that plastic down, and it's just like wet sanding paint and to reflect the light, but we're removing that untreated layer of plastic. And then after we get that smooth and polished down, just like wet sanding, getting the orange peel out of a paint job, you're starting off with a coarse sand pad, working your way up to a finer one, then you're polishing it up, and then you're going to put wax on the paint. With this plastic, you're basically doing the same thing with these pads that it provides. This kit provides you with some grits, 1, 2, and 3, but then you got a lubricant that would act as like the water, but you can substitute that here in just a second, as well as this headlight restorer, which is basically just like a polishing compound for plastic, which is very similar to this Meguiar's Plastex that you can buy, just in bulk right here in this bigger container. Does pretty much the same thing, and it has a little bit of coarse grit in there, so as you're polishing it up, it kind of cuts in a little bit. So what I'm doing, I'm taking that number 1 pad, and at first I'm going over it with this Meguiar's Plastex. So I'm just going to go ahead and polish this light out, then I'm going to put my water hose and rinse all this stuff away as I'm polishing it. And I'm also going to go ahead and pop this hood so I don't risk scratching the hood. So as I'm using that water, what that water is doing is not only lubricating, but it's also kind of cleaning away all the debris and junk, and it's also cleaning out the sandpaper as well. So it cleans away that sandpaper, letting it get a good fresh clean bite on that material. And so basically you don't really necessarily have to start, like I mentioned before, with the most coarse grit. You really kind of want to take a guess of, you don't really want to have to do too much sanding that you don't have to do. But sometimes if you have some deeper scratches, you may say, okay, well now I need to go a little more coarse to cut in a little deeper, but then it's just more sanding that you're going to have to do, because you're going to have to do this sanding in steps, working your way up to that finer coarse. Grit, I should say, not coarse. So you work your way up to that finer grit sandpaper, up to 2000 or even finer, And one thing that you can do as you're sanding, as it gets slicker and slicker in all the areas, you want to make sure you're not going to get sandpaper on all those edges of that paint. You may want to actually mask off any painted areas around the headlight or remove the headlight. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and just do it with it installed. But basically just work your way up to that finest grit sandpaper, and then grab that polishing compound and that pad and work your way up, just getting very light pressure all the way around, uniform, and then also keep that speed between 1200 and 1800 RPMs. But before you proceed on to the next grit sandpaper, you need to dry it off with the towel and look at it really close before you move up to the next finer sandpaper. And as you can see here, we still have some scratches here, and those are going to stick out really bad if we were to go ahead and get this thing, polish it all out, make everything crystal clear, and those scratches are still going to stand out even worse than they are now. So now would be the time to step on up to a more coarse sandpaper. So here I'm going to step on up to a 600, and this also, the paper, you can get wet and dry sandpaper, so try to look for that if you can. And you can notice that I'm just trying to use nice uniform strokes back and forth. I'm not changing direction. A lot of instructions will tell you to change direction. I'm going to tell you how I do it. I don't recommend you change direction. Just go back and forth, especially when you're doing these coarse, with the coarse sandpaper, I should say, not with the fine. When you're doing a polishing pad, you can go kind of different directions. But when you're doing this coarse sandpaper, trying to get those deep scratches out, just keep going in the same direction. And once you think you got it, it'll look clearer with the water, so you got to make sure it's nice and dry. But you can take a flashlight or something, and you can see all the fine little scratches we put in with the sandpaper that are all nice and uniform. But then you'll see these scratches like this right here. So that's going to show up a lot. It's still, the lens is still kind of wet. It even shows up even better when this lens is nice and dry. But just make a note of where they are, because it can be very challenging to see them, especially while you're wet sanding. So just make a mental note of where those fine scratches are, and then just you don't want to sit there and just in that one spot. You need to move around and keep it nice and uniform. Keep the water rinsing everything away, keeping that sandpaper clean. And this is going to require some elbow grease, but it's going to be well worth the results in the end. So dry after the 600 grit, that's what it looks like. Kind of like a frosted glass. And you can see where whatever coating or film or whatever was on there, you can see the edge of it, that I probably ought to sand just a little bit more, but we'll step it on up to some 800 grit, then 1000, and work our way on up finer and finer, and then buff it out clear. All right, so this is after 2000 grit, and I haven't really done it probably as much as I should. I probably should do it a little bit more with the 2000 grit. And then I'm going to move on up over to the buffing pad, and I'll be using the plastic polishing compound. I'm sorry, that's the Meguiar's Plastex compound. I really like the way it works. I'm just going to work it into this brush here. Make sure it gets nice and uniform all over the lens and into my brush. But it's the Meguiar's Plastex plastic polish. I've used it on Lexan, which is actually polycarbonate. Works really well. But just go nice even strokes. Don't use too much pressure. Don't use too much speed. And just get to where you can see that light and that. All Alright, so this is pretty decent. This is after the first round of buffing. So we'll do a second round of buffing with the wheel, and then we'll do one by hand, and that should bring us where we want to be. And guys, for the better results, you got to put some time into it, and just make sure you're doing this nice and even, and get it into a place where you can look at that light in different directions, different angles. You can get the sunlight, the shop light, whatever. But also just make sure you don't go too fast with that buffer wheel to get that plastic too hot. And you can see here, I'm actually kind of cooling everything down, breaking it down, doing a fine polish with water. And that helps clean out that pad wheel and keep everything cool. Alright, so that's after the second round of buffing. That looks pretty good. Don't see any of those cracks. Still got some, I might be able to buff that out by hand right here on the edge. A little bit of imperfection right there, but overall really good. So after seeing that the Rain-X pad with the polishing compound didn't cut enough, I went ahead and started with the 600 on the other side because I knew it had some scratches I wanted to take care of. Alright, I thought I was about ready to move on and proceed with the finer grit papers, but then I noticed this scratch here, and then I noticed a couple of other ones up here. So after you've gone over it with some 600 grit and dry it up really good and look really closely for those deeper scratches, because when we go with the finer sandpaper, all we're going to be doing is making the clearer spots clear. We're not going to be able to get rid of any of those deeper scratches. Now's the time to do it. So if we were to polish this on out, it'd be clear and you'd see those scratches clear as day. So we got to get it out now, so I got to go ahead and proceed with more wet sanding with the 600 grit and then dry it off and make sure I don't see these scratches that I'm seeing here. And once I got all those out, I proceeded to move on up to the 800, the 1000, the 1500, 2000, and you could go on up to 3000 if you wanted to, but I only had 2000 sandpaper with me, and I'm just showing you the results of doing that and then going to the buffer wheel after 2000 grit. And running these buffer wheels, I mean, it's kind of I'm sure I'm doing a lot of things wrong here, but to professional detailers or what have you, but it gets pretty good results for me. You have to do it a few times. The more times you do it, the better you're going to get and the better results you're going to get. Just be careful, don't get into your paint. Then after you get it all buffed out, now is the time to apply the sealant. And the sealant is basically going to be kind of like sunscreen. If you don't put a sealant on, those freshly polished headlights are going to look good for about 1 day. It's kind of like sunscreen, like I said, and just like sunscreen, it'll wash off. So you need to apply, depending on what sealant you decide to use. I'm going to just go ahead and use the Rain-X sealant for now. I've had pretty good luck with it, but you need to apply it often. I would say probably just a little bit every time you wash the vehicle. Right after you wash the vehicle, every week or so, apply some of that sealant to it. And then it will last for 6 months or a year without having to redo all this over again. And that really just kind of depends on what part of the area of the country you are, how much your vehicle is exposed to the sun, the heat, everything else. So results will vary. But anyway, I hope you guys like this video. I hope it helped you out. And it's real easy. It's satisfying to do. Saves you a lot of money because sometimes a lot of these headlights are very expensive to replace. So it's just a little bit of elbow grease, a little bit of time, and you can get some nice results. Do me a favor, hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. I'll have more videos like this coming soon. Thanks for watching.